There we go. Now we're recording. I'd paused it for all the boring stuff before we started. But anyways, just as I was saying, it's important to me that I continue to reach people now. I know there's a handful of you on this call that I know pretty well. There's a couple of names I don't recognize as much, or maybe we haven't got a chance to talk. And my favorite thing about how we're doing this campaign is the old school grassroots, trying to meet as many people in as many places as possible, and genuinely, being out in the community and shaking hands and going to people's houses for barbecues and things of that nature. And, it's important to me that we get back to the basics of loving each other and working with each other and being community driven. And unfortunately, the situation we're in is kind of stealing that to a certain extent from the campaign and from the lives of so many people. And I think it's a blessing that we have technology in the way that we do these days. Prior generations, when we were going through famines or depressions and such, you were often on your own in a lot of ways. And we don't have that same issue nowadays. We got things like Facebook Live or Zoom calls and Skype. And, it's really a blessing from a humanity standpoint that we have these resources now. I've got friends I got a friend that's a magician. He's been doing magic from home. Right. I've got another friend that's a guitar player, and he's playing for 2 hours every afternoon on his keyboard and taking tips. And it's not life as we know it. Might be not be the life that they want or need, but it is a life still. And to try to focus on being glass half full, I think, is what's important right now, especially in the sphere of conversation that we're in right now. Like, politically speaking, it's very easy to be maybe pessimistic about what we're seeing, how things are being handled or not handled, depending on your opinions on things. Um, and, and to really just focus on the things that are good, I think, is what's truly important right now. So I'm grateful for Zoom right now, and grateful for you all taking some time this morning with me. Um, I'm running for office here in Washington for a handful of reasons. Some of them cliche, some of them not. Um, I'm a born and raised Washingtonian. I was born in Everett. My wife was born in Wenatchee. Um, without knowing each other throughout high school, my wife and I went to elementary school, middle school, junior high, and high school together, all in Marysville. And it's a fairly large school system out here. Um, but my family's lived in Marysville for my whole life. My grandparents have lived in Marysville here in Washington my whole life. My wife's family actually immigrated from Mexico, to North Carolina, and then eventually to Washington, 35, 40 years ago. And so Washington is home for us. And I see a lot of people, talking about, maybe how their state's being run politically. And in Washington, that's, a lot of people maybe on the conservative side talking about leaving the state of Washington to go find something better. But then you hear the same conversation from maybe liberals in Texas, wanting to move to a less conservative state. So we've got this kind of political world right now where people are feeling so marginalized in their communities by public policy and by politicians on both sides of the aisle, all across the country, where people are really feeling like they need to flee their state to go somewhere else. And it's great that we live in a republic that allows for that diversity. Um, but I don't want people to have to leave their homes. I love Washington, and the last thing I want to do is to want to move away from maybe the policies that I disagree with. Right, this is home. This is the community that my wife and I have grown up in, and fighting for what we believe in, and trying to change Washington and move us in a positive direction is something that is absolutely of highest importance to my wife and to myself. And really why we're doing what we're doing is to be be committed to something and be active in changing our community. And I was never political before a couple years ago. I actually hated politics. I actually had some Time Shop posts show up from Facebook a, a year or two ago, where I was basically complaining about people talking about politics on Facebook too much, and now here I am talking about politics on Facebook. But what I found is a lot of folks maybe don't get involved ever, or typically not involved until something specifically harms their way of life, harms them in a negative fashion, and gives them a reason to maybe pull their blinders off. Right? We live in a society where life is super busy. A lot of families are struggling to make ends meet, regardless of how good or bad the economy is at any point in time. And we just live in a fast-paced way of life where, you leave for work at 6 a.m. If you've got kids' soccer practice after school, right, you don't get home till 7. You're cooking dinner and rushing to get the kids' homework done and in bed by 10. And people don't have time for politics, right? Oftentimes until something's hurt them. So running for office for me kind of is important for both of those factors. My wife and I were harmed by public policy, specifically Obamacare regulations cost my wife her insurance policy, and my, at the time, 3-month-old son, his health insurance policy. But also from an apathy standpoint, in recognizing that I wasn't involved before somebody gave me a reason to get involved. And had that not happened, it would have been very easy to keep my head buried in the sand. So I have an appreciation for maybe the non-voters, the people in Washington that don't think their vote matters, that politicians are going to say one thing and do another, and that their vote isn't going to change anything. And even though at times we see elections decided by few votes, right? We saw this in this past election. There's a handful here in Washington where people where races were literally won by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 votes in multiple cases. But even then, as we can see, the numbers matter sometimes. The politicians seem to be all interchangeable with one another, and oftentimes their public stances on things change once they get elected, or they all sound alike with whatever their party's telling them to say. The Democrats, you can go online, you can see what Democrats are saying, and you can see the same 3 or 4 different talk paths that they're all using. You look at the Republicans, and it's the same thing. It's basically toe the company line, and stick to what the party wants you to say. And because of that, even though sometimes people realize that 1 or 2 votes can make. Excuse me, pulled my headset out. Technical issue. Of course, my campaign manager's calling me. Apparently, he's got something important. I forgot that our meeting was at 11. But anyways, it's just, it's very easy for people to feel like even if they show up to vote and their guy wins, right, that it's still not going to change anything. And I felt that way a lot myself. And instead of trying to perpetuate that system and go the path that we all know isn't working, it's important to me to stand out from the crowd and to think outside the box and to do things differently than maybe we've seen in the last couple of decades. And for me, that type of effort to help break the apathy, I think, is key to positive change in our communities, and to give people a reason to show up, and to also give them the resources and the tools and the education to do so. As I've been involved in politics, I've had to learn a lot. I've had to learn how to do things like public records request. I've had to learn to know how to research candidates, and what days of the week city council meetings are on, and how amendments to bills work, and how you can comment on bills. And one of the fun things about what we've been doing from a campaign and a lot of the meet and greets we go do is to really help encourage people to get more involved in that way. I stay away from the, hey, you need to vote red because blue is evil, or you need to vote blue because red is evil. And I would rather just give people the tools and resources so that they can start making educated choices, and see that there's so many ways that you can be involved in politics outside of voting in the presidential election every year. And a lot of that's local level type stuff. And that leads me to the position of insurance commissioner, right? There's so many so many things going on in politics at the high levels that really are hard to make an impact on, unless you have a huge movement, a huge groundswell, behind maybe a topic or issue. But at the local level, there are ways to be involved, and positions like the state insurance commissioner is one of those ways that you can be involved, but government has basically hidden the position in the shadows, right? There's a position in government that has huge bearing on your life, your business life, and your personal life, your health, that has been hidden in the shadows. And I've got a heart to help people get involved, but if there's positions out there that the general public doesn't even know exists then it makes it extremely difficult to promote the change that we need. So I've chosen this particular race for a couple of reasons. One, I'm passionate about insurance and educating people on how insurance works and how it can work better for their families. But I'm also very passionate about exposing government and making it more transparent and more accessible to the average person. I think one of the root causes that we see in the failure in government now is the inaccessibility of government itself, the bureaucracy it's laden in, the lack of transparency, the idea that bills are getting passed in literally the middle of the night sometimes, that there's bills that get written that literally are blank. A Google title, ghost title bills, if you haven't heard about that, there's literally blank bills. The public doesn't get to comment. And these bills get passed with literally nothing in writing for the public to review before the bill's passed. So if we want to change things, we need to start exposing these cracks so that we, the people, can take power back over the government that's supposed to serve and protect our rights, as opposed to control and dictate the way that we live. And the position of insurance commissioner has been around for since here in Washington, I think it's about 1880, maybe 1890. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was 1888, if I remember correctly. And in that time, we've only had 8 different commissioners. That's 8 people that are averaging between 15 and 20 years that sit in these positions decade after decade. The gentleman that holds this position now has held it for 20 years, and he's literally held it this entire century. So there's a department in Olympia that has immense power, has had very little turnover over the years, and the general public doesn't know about it. So it's been my pleasure to bring this topic to the forefront. And whether I end up earning your respect or your vote, I hope that you will continue after this election to hold the position more accountable, do more research into it, demand that they do more for you and your individual rights and what your family needs. And if we can just expose it from that standpoint and get people more involved, I believe that moves things in a positive direction. I believe we're going to do a lot more than that. I firmly believe that we have the right ideas and the right team here and the right message to get elected in November. But we'll go over some of that here in a moment. So what is insurance commissioner? Okay, that's a common question. Number one question I get, and further illustrates why running for this position is so important and why it's important to the general public. Position of insurance commissioner is a consumer protection agency. Okay, that's what it's tasked with. That means making sure that insurance companies are following the law. It also means making sure that consumers are following the law. So what does that look like? If a auto insurance company wants to issue a new policy type, okay, that means they have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of RCWs and regulations that they have to follow to stay in compliance with the state ordinances and laws. When they want to issue that policy, they have to ask permission from the state insurance commissioner to sell that policy with the benefits that they like, the coverages that they think are beneficial to their consumers based upon their market research, and at the rates that their underwriters and actuaries have spent countless hours determining would make a solvent product for their consumers. And oftentimes those policies go into Olympia, and instead of getting approved in, maybe 30 days, 60 days, maybe coming back with a change or two and having it, hit the ground running in, 60 or 90 days, it could take a year or longer, even 2 years to get a policy approved. Now, what that means is insurance carriers that, especially in areas like car insurance, which is actually highly competitive. I think it could be more competitive, and there's some things there we can do, but it is a competitive industry with actually fairly low profit margins, usually 3 or 4% profit margins. Car insurance carriers, it is in their best interest to provide a product and a service at a value that consumers want, because if they don't, they lose market share. And if they lose market share, their shareholders lose income and the board of directors start getting fired, right? So it's in insurance carriers' best interest to come out with good policies as quickly as possible. And a lot of the people that work on these policies are just like you and I. They are average people that have office jobs, maybe have degrees in fields that they no longer work in, or went to school specifically for, insurance and actuary and underwriting and things of that nature. But they're average people like you and I that are working to analyze the numbers, crunch the risks out there, and to come out with a policy that they think the public will like. And when they are ready to go to bat for that, it is usually going to be at a reduction in cost for somebody. Okay? Not everybody always, but usually there's going to be a reduction in cost if they're coming out with a new policy type, right? They're either reducing your cost in one area or giving you better coverage in another area. Okay. And what that means is we as consumers are stuck waiting for a policy that we may want to buy that could make our lives better for extended periods of time, right? So it instead of taking 30 or 60 or 90 days, they're taking a year or 2 years to get these policies approved. And that means we're paying more for things that we could be paying less for and that would serve our lives better. They also approve rate changes. So if an insurance carrier wants to come out with a lower rate, they actually have to request a rate change. And the insurance carriers will often deny those rate changes while simultaneously allowing for price increases in other areas of insurance. So it's a huge amount of power that the insurance carrier has to approve policies, to allow changes to those coverages, to approve the rates that you're ultimately going to end up paying for your home insurance and your car insurance and even your health insurance. So it's a pure regulatory position in that sense of the way. It's 240 employees in Olympia, handful of employees in Seattle, about $27 or $30 million in salary. And the position in the 2018 budget, quote my numbers here, was roughly $600 million in taxes paid on insurance policies in the state of Washington. And that's doing nothing but going up. So it's a giant position in Olympia that is regulating insurance carriers on how they conduct business, and oftentimes making it more expensive to offer you cheaper policies. On the flip side of that, they do go after fraudsters as well. If you file a false insurance claim, the position is tasked with basically being the enforcement end for the insurance companies and prosecuting fraudulent insurance claims. Taking away licenses from people from insurance agents that they think have done things improperly. So a lot of punishment and hammer as well on the other end of it. So that's some of what the insurance carrier does. It regulates your health insurance, your car insurance, your home insurance, your title insurance, your small business insurance, your big business insurance, and everything in between, your motorcycles, your boats, your ATVs. Anything that you basically see driving down the street is insured and regulated by this one department in Olympia. Now, what does the position not do? Okay, it is not a legislative position. Okay, so when I'm elected to this in November, I don't get to go into legislative session and start voting on bills, yes or no. What I do get to do is make requested bills. I do see a question here from Alex. I'll chime into that here in a second. Thank you. Good note here. If anybody has a question, feel free to use the chat feature And then I'll be unmuting folks here in a minute too. We can start chatting. But so I wouldn't get to go into Olympia and start voting on bills, but I do get to make requested bills of, requested by the insurance commissioner, right? And hopefully build consensus with at least one of the two caucuses in Olympia, or hopefully some individuals in either caucus to make recommendations for bills. And then I get to be the policy expert that testifies on these bills. And with the title of insurance commissioner, and the knowledge that we have and getting elected on the ideas that we have will show that the people want the things that we're talking about. So we'll get to start impacting bills in committees through education and requesting things, but I will not ultimately get to vote on things, which does handcuff the position a little bit on some of what I would like to get taken care of, because it will ultimately be at the will of the legislature in a lot of things. The department does have a couple of attorneys on staff. Knowing that I won't have the power to vote on bills, I've already started researching ways that we could impact things without having a vote. Okay. One of those ways will be using attorneys to start going through RCWs and which ones that we think are constitutional and which ones that we think are not, which ones we think are enforceable by current law, and which ones we think that if we gave pushback ultimately wouldn't be enforceable by law. And we're going to start going through that red tape and those RCWs line by line and looking for the ones that are most harmful to people, and to immediately start attacking those laws from the inside, and put a package together to sue the state government to overturn some of the legislation that's been harmful in raising people's rates. We're also going to start doing satellite offices and telecommuting. So coincidentally, this is something I've been talking about for a couple years. And of course, all of a sudden now the state insurance commissioner's office is now working remotely, like many of you are. And this is something I've been talking about for a couple years now, to where, if you want to work in the insurance commissioner's office, you basically have to live within driving distance of Olympia. That's harmful for a couple reasons. Okay. It makes the department inaccessible for skilled workers all over the state. And it creates an influx in traffic in Olympia, right? And it creates a burden on the infrastructure. It creates a burden on the aging building that, if you saw any pictures I posted this year, is very dirty on the outside. So they're not focusing on even keeping the building clean. It's yellow. But if we allowed things like telecommuting from the office's standpoint, we could do a couple things. We could increase skilled workers from all over the state, bring in, higher potential employees for positions. But more importantly than that, we can make those employees accessible to you, the voter. Okay. What I mean by that is, instead of having to drive to Olympia to have your voice heard, or to send an email and hope you get a response in, 2 to 4 weeks, I want to start housing insurance commissioner employees at local county and city municipal buildings. We've already built relationship with a number of different city councils and county councils to get kind of feedback on how it would work and if it would be doable. And that feedback's been nothing but positive. So as we get closer to election, we'll actually be putting together a whole plan for that, and a formal proposal for what that would look like. But imagine, instead of driving to Olympia, if you could drive to Everett, where you live, or Tacoma, where you live, or Spokane, where you live, and have government be accessible to you. And you could actually go in and talk to somebody and have a relationship with the person that's tasked with serving you and protecting you. I believe that makes government a lot more accessible. And why I think that is important is, the more accessible it is and the more eyes that we have on these things, the less corruptible it will be. The more accountable that it'll be to the needs of the people. Okay. And not the lobbyists that get paid to sit in Olympia while you're stuck at work, working your 9 to 5 or running your small business. So there's things that the insurance commissioner will and will not be able to do. We're analyzing what we think we can get accomplished. I have a lot of ideas. We'll start answering questions on that here in just a moment or two. But ultimately, it's important to me that outside the legislature that we come in ready to go day one with ideas and options that will provide relief to people's pockets immediately and make government a little bit better. Right now, the position's hidden in the shadows, and my absolute highest priority is bringing government back to the people and making it responsible to us, what we consent to, as the state constitution requires. So I'll go ahead and pause here for just a second. Go ahead and if you have a question, unmute yourself, or put something in the chat. We'll start diving into some health insurance, auto insurance, things of that nature here in a moment. But do you have any questions on anything that I've gone over so far? Okay. Well, that's easy. That means I'm doing a good job communicating, or you're only half listening. Or who's in the front row of the class and who sits in the back row of the class?
I'm typing slow, Anthony.
Awesome. No, this is good. Well, let me dive into some of my.
Well, so I do have a question. I was typing.
Oh, okay, cool.
All right. Just the $600 million in taxes that's paid for by consumers, that goes into the general fund, or okay.
Yeah, and let me restate that slightly. So it's paid for by insurance companies based upon the revenue that they bring in, the premiums that they charge, which we all know then ultimately gets tacked on to the price. It just doesn't say tax next to it. It just says premium.
Okay.
But they ultimately write the check. On that note, though, in just recent weeks, the legislature was trying to pass new fees on insurance that would actually be listed as a surcharge to you, the consumer, in addition to the $600 million in taxes that you're paying. Now, luckily, for the second year in a row, that didn't come out of committee. I believe that it is still very much alive, and they're just waiting to pass it. And the reason why I believe this is, and I'll give you some background on this bill. There's a Public Lands Commissioner, Hillary Franz. She's a Democrat who has aspirations to be more than the Public Lands Commissioner, has very much attached herself to needing more money to fix climate change, okay, and to make sure that our air is breathable, okay? Now, let me preface the rest of what I'm going to say by saying I got asthma from the forest fires 2 years ago. Forest fires have harmed my life permanently. I'm an athlete, never had breathing issues in my entire life, and that was as a 10-year cigarette smoker. I'm now a reformed ex-smoker, but I still never even had breathing issues, asthma of any issue in my entire life. And the forest fires actually gave me asthma a couple years ago. So I have an inhaler now, which we can talk about the shortage on inhalers and some libertarian solutions to that here in a minute. But why I say that is the forest fires have personally affected me. So I have a vested interest in fixing this issue. But what the Public Lands Commissioner is proposing is a dedicated funding line to additional money to her department. Her department has a biannual budget of over $500 million. I think it's about $550 million. Each budget, she has to re-request that money. Okay. I think there's some good arguments for that. I think there's some bad arguments to that. But what she's asking for is a dedicated funding line. And to do that, she's asking for new money, not to take her existing $500 budget and take, maybe 250 of that and make it a guaranteed funding every year. She's looking to add additional funding to that department. And instead of using the existing $600 million in taxes on insurance, she's looking to add an additional fee on all property and casualty insurance. So business insurance, boat insurance, car insurance, home insurance, everything in that respect. She's looking to add an additional surcharge. Now, she claims it'll just be a couple of dollars a month per policy. Well, if you own a house and you own a business, maybe you own, marriage, you have two cars, maybe you got a kid with a car, right? we're not talking about $2 or $3 a month. We're talking about $10 to $20 a month, and we're talking about it year after year after year. And if you have a big property and casualty policy, like maybe your car dealership, right? Maybe you're maybe you're Mary Maids, and you've got 40 vehicles in Snohomish County for your maids are driving around, right? Maybe you're a commercial plumber that has 10 different vans going around the King County, right? These policies aren't $300 a month. They're $3,000 a month, maybe $30,000 a month for big policies, right? So she's been disingenuous in saying that it's only going to cost people a little bit of money, because she's right. It'll cost some people a little bit of money. Single guy driving a car by himself with renter's insurance, he'll probably pay $2 more a month. Somebody with more insurance than that could be paying easily, $20, $30, $40, $50 more a month. So that adds up. And so that's in addition to the $600 million. It's in addition to her $500 million. And my argument for this has been, okay, if we need this money, how can we do it in the most equitable way for everybody, the least harmful way to the citizens that are already paying taxes? Why not put a sunset clause on it to see if it's working, and then use existing money from the insurance carriers and use the existing budget? So there's no additional spending, no additional revenue. It's just that we're restructuring the way the system works so that it can be more reliable, right, and less on a whim. Now, I don't know that that's the perfect solution here, but to me, it seems like it's a valid question. It's a valid solution. It's a valid idea that could be debated, as opposed to, we need more of your money, and we're going to ask the legislature to pass this for you, even though it's not being taken to a public vote. So that stalled out last year, and it stalled out again this year. It has not gone to a vote, though. So to me, that means they're just waiting to go for it further. Hillary fans pushed it hard this year, and I honestly think if it was a 120-day legislative session, it probably would have gotten voted on. But because we're in a short session this year, it was only a 60-day window, and I don't think they had enough time to get all the bills through that they wanted to. So that's a little bit about the taxes that you pay on insurance. One of the ways they're trying to tax or surcharge your insurance to be more expensive. And that's not even saying that what they want the money for is a bad idea. It's saying, how can we accomplish that same goal without increasing taxes and taking more from people? And I think there's healthy ways to do that, that they have just been unwilling to think outside the box. I've tweeted at Hillary fans multiple times, and she refuses to respond to a question about this, which shows me that she'll just be flat unwilling to work with different ideologies that could eventually get elected. So hope that answers your question, Bob, and then some.
It does, thank you. And a second question too, it was exciting to hear about attorneys reviewing RCWs for constitutionality. So what is the office's budget, and would you definitely have that ability to set up an effort like that?
I'll have to review some of that. And honestly, it'll take a lawyer to help me figure out where we can move things around to do things that don't get me recalled either, right? I need to stay in office, and I need to, play with the existing laws to a certain extent, and I don't have all the answers there. There's 240 employees. 3 of them are attorneys, and I think there's definitely things we could be doing to refocus our energy of what our attorneys are focusing on, instead of just being, yes sirs.
Yeah, that plays well with, I think, your base, and then a lot of the conservative base probably scares the liberal base.
One thing that I found through this outreach is yes, the left and the right have very much different ideologies. The things that I'm focused on are very much nonpartisan. Pretty much everybody wants transparent government. Pretty much everybody wants things to be cheaper, right? Pretty much everybody wants things to be a little easier. And what's been really fun about this campaign is, for the same reasons I'm running to fix things, right? The insurance commissioner, nobody knows about it, is the same reason why it's been a lot of fun for me, because nobody knows about the insurance commissioner. position, it's been a lot less difficult to come to common ground with people because they don't have preconceived notions on what it should be doing. And there's less ideological driven thought behind the position, right? You're running for president, you're either Democrat or Republican, basically, and that's it. You're running for insurance commissioner. A lot of people don't think the position should be partisan to begin with. They like the fact that I'm bringing it to the conversation and that I'm willing to see both sides of the conversation on every topic. And so it's been really healthy and it's been a blessing in that respect. And it's been a lot of fun too. Okay, cool. Well, let's dive into health insurance. We got about 20 minutes left here. I'm going to do 5 or 10 minutes on health insurance and then a couple minutes on auto insurance and gun insurance. But health insurance is the big one. Does anybody have any specific questions about health insurance that I can address firsthand?
For part of our family, Anthony, we are participating in the healthcare exchange. And so one thing I've noticed over the last year and a half has been an increase in the number of choices that they've had in the marketplace. Whether, I don't know exactly why, but to me, it's almost an improvement in terms of I can find access. I'm sure it's quite subsidized, but I can find access to a catastrophic type health policy where I don't get a lot of benefit from my daily visits to the doctor, but if I have a broken arm, I'm covered a little more.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of that. I can touch on that. So right after Obamacare came out, and even as recently as about 3 years ago, I think there was over 12 counties that only had one carrier choice on the state, approved list, essentially. And a couple of those counties have seen a few more choices come into the market. The insurance commissioner has basically helped here in Washington mandate everything that was mandated at the federal level for Obamacare has essentially also been mandated here at the state level for Obamacare. So what that means is there's roughly, last I checked, there's 59 different mandatory coverages on health insurance, which is the most in the entire country. I think some of the catastrophic type plans that are available today are a lot different than what I would view as a true catastrophic coverage and what I'd like to help create. So let's talk about that. So right now we have a handful of choices in different areas. Some areas have more choices than others, but it's very much regulated and very much still mandated on what is covered. And those mandates definitely increase costs. They say that each mandate costs between 0.5% to 1.5%, depending on the mandate, in additional premium to you, right? So if you count that up at 59, 60 mandates, you're looking at pretty easily an extra 30% insurance costs just on those mandates. So what I want to see here in Washington for healthcare insurance, because there's a difference between healthcare and insurance. I think that's one of the most important things we do moving forward, is split those two topics. One is the care you get from your doctor and how much it costs. The other is how you pay for it. Those are two entirely separate conversations and should not be misconstrued. And we see a lot of people talking about, we want Medicare for all, we want healthcare for all, right? And they very rarely talk about how they're actually going to reduce the cost of care itself, which means everything's still going to be expensive. They tout removing a couple percent in overhead costs by getting some of the insurance bureaucracy out of the way, which I think insurance bureaucracy and government bureaucracy are about the only two evil hells competing for last place against one another. But aside from, thinking that they can cut a couple percent in cost, they're not addressing the cost of the care itself. And I think that's something we absolutely need to do. But to allow more choice and more flexibility in the policies that you buy will allow more flexibility in the costs that you're paying. And I think the easiest way to do that is to go to a true a la carte format. Okay. So every type of insurance that you purchase right now, aside from health insurance, literally every type of insurance you buy, you get choice in coverage, and you get to write the check for it every single month. Okay. You buy a business insurance policy, you get to decide, do you want property damage coverage? Do you want, extended driver coverage? Do you want trailer coverage? Do you want, data loss coverage? Do you want HR coverage? Do you want all these XYZ coverages that you get to pick from? Your car insurance, you get to decide, do you want a little bit of coverage at a low cost, or do you want a high bit of coverage at high cost? Do you want low deductibles or high deductibles? Do you want uninsured motorist or don't you? Do you want to add towing coverage? Do you, want to add comprehensive or collision, right? So in every type of insurance, we get countless choices. It's like walking down the cereal aisle, right? Something different for everybody. But when it comes to health insurance, you are essentially captive to what your insurance, captive to what your employer buys. And if you change jobs, you lose it, which is a huge issue that I think Democrats are right to address. Or if you buy it on the open market, you're still limited in your choice, even though some of those choices might be a little bit better than they were 2-3 years ago. What I want to see is for Eric or Alex or Anna or Lori or any of you guys on this call here, for you to be able to shop for exactly the coverage that you want. Okay? Because the coverage that you want is not going to be the same as anybody else I just mentioned. Okay? It might be similar in many respects. You might find women wanting the same typical coverage. You might find old people wanting the same typical coverage. You might find the youth wanting the same types of coverages, right? There's going to be some familiarity and some similarity in that respect. But ultimately, Eric's health care needs are different than mine or Anna's or Alyssa's. Okay? And it's important to embrace that diversity instead of forcing one size fits all solution. So I want to make it as easy as possible to embrace our diversity, to make sure that each person gets the choice and the type of coverage that they want. To do that, I think we need to uncouple insurance from the employer. Okay. One of the reasons why we have this system right now where basically everybody gets their insurance from the employer is lots of employers get tax breaks to offer insurance to their employees. Now, small business don't get that same tax breaks, but they're essentially forced to offer the same benefits. Otherwise, they're not competitive in the job market. Okay. What I'd like to see is I'd like to see those tax breaks go away. Yes, this is a libertarian talk about removing tax breaks. I know it's rare, but I believe it's corporatism, and it's giving certain corporations and groups a hand, favors essentially over other businesses. I don't think it's equal. By doing so, by removing those tax breaks, what we'll see is instead of all employees essentially offering health insurance, you will start seeing employees offering, you can take this healthcare package, or we can give you an increased salary. Okay. Some people will take the easy route. They want to go through their employer. They don't have time to research it. Maybe they'll research it later, but for now, we'll just take what the employer's offering. And that's awesome. If that's what you want, that's what I want for you. Others might be like, man, I really like looking through my policy. This doesn't offer what I need. I just got married. We might be having a baby in a couple years, right? Or God, the kids are out of the house. I don't need to worry about XYZ anymore. And, I don't want the plan that my employer offers. Okay. And now the employer can pay that employee more money, and they could then take that money and go buy policies on the open market. Okay. And start shopping for more specifically what they want. Now, there's going to be some extra layers to that. It's not as simple as just doing that, because we obviously need to change the way the policies work and what people have access to buy. But I think that's the first step to removing the power that the big companies have over our lives and opening the market so that we can each individually shop for the type of insurance that we want. I will do a whole video on a la carte insurance and exactly how I think line by line it can work. This is something I put a lot of thought into. It's what I do. Ironically, I find specifically the progressive left talking about Medicare for all And they'll talk about, reducing reducing costs on things like, I talked to a guy the other day. He said he wanted to cap pay of chiropractors. But it took me about 10 questions to get him to that answer. And he didn't have a clue on what a chiropractor makes currently or what it takes to run a chiropractor's office. And what I mean by that is when pressed on specifics on these issues, a lot of people that support Medicare for All don't actually know how the hell it's going to work and what that's actually going to mean to your local dentist and your local family doctor, your gynecologist, right? They have an idea how it's going to work for hospitals, I think, and big medical, which is going to love Medicare for All because they're the ones going to be controlling it. They don't know how it's going to work for the small guy, the local family doctors. The difference is with me, I like this a la carte thing. I've been studying this for years now. I've been putting a ton of thought into exactly how I think these policies could work. And so keep an eye out for some more videos on topic-specific issues, like a la carte insurance. So before I move on to the next topic, there was a question. Alex Kaufman, appreciate you asking a question. You said, how do you think health insurance should respond to the crisis? Okay. I was on an interview last night and somebody was like, God, how can the insurance commissioner even, affect this? And coincidentally, the insurance commissioner has played a role in this position, in this issue already, and I think is going about it the complete backwards way. So recently, the state insurance commissioner basically waived all fees and deductibles for testing for the coronavirus. And this was actually pretty widely applauded. I quietly read a lot of threads and saw the typical response from a lot of people like, oh, this is great. They should have done this already. And what it's doing is basically forcing insurance carriers to go outside of the contracts that they have signed with their consumers, in most cases businesses, and having to work outside of those contracts and cover something that wouldn't necessarily be covered otherwise. Okay. What that means in the big picture is that right now, people that are not getting tested for this because maybe they've been quarantining for 12 days like myself, will ultimately end up paying for the tests for everybody else. Because instead of each person paying their little portion, right, socialism, for turning the topic on its head, instead of each person paying for their little portion of this, they're trying to force a couple of big corporations to pay for it. Now, I've got no love lost for corporations. I can rail on regulatory capture all day long and talk about why what they've done is bad. But I also don't think a government should be forcing any company to do something against their free will. Now, how could we have accomplished something as good as making these tests free? Because I do believe we should try to find ways to make these tests as cheap as possible for everybody to prevent this issue from getting worse. What I have issue with is the way it's being done. So, Alex, you said, how should insurers respond to this? I think insurers should cover the test for free. Okay. How could we do that, though? How could we do that in a healthy way? How could the insurance commissioner help encourage that? What if they abolish taxes for a year on health insurance companies and say, hey, if you do this and you help the people today, we will repay you. That way, nobody comes out ahead. Okay, nobody comes out from behind. If we're going to spend, I'm just going to random numbers here. If we're going to spend $100 million on tests and force you to pay for it, how about we reduce your overhead by $100 million in taxes so that the people get their tests for free, and so that insurance carriers don't have to find ways to rewrite their policies next year to offset that $100 million? Because we all know insurance companies are greedy, right? That's the topic that we see a lot these days. And we know that ultimately they are going to pass those costs on to consumers next year. Everything that they're losing right now, because this is a huge strain on the health insurance industry, and that's what it's there for. So they should be strained. That's doing its job right now. But instead of forcing them to pay for it in a way that they don't get any say, is ultimately going to just raise our prices next year. Okay. And I think that we could have done this in a way that was more equitable for everybody, and was less hammer and more consent driven, which is, I think, what's necessary for a true and peaceful society. We should be working with the health insurers to make this happen cooperatively, voluntarily. And I think that insurance carriers, had this been presented to them in a light of like, hey, do you want some good press? How about we get 8 of the top insurance carriers in the state to all do a joint, virtual press conference saying, we know that we've let you down in the past, but we want to be here for you today. And with the cooperation of the state government, we've managed to make this affordable for everybody at no additional cost. And I think that could have gone over very well for everybody. I think it would have been healthy for society and healing wounds, where we feel like a lot of people feel like corporations are out to get them. And I think there's some truth to that. I think that this would have been a much healthier way to conduct ourselves in a societal sense than a politician looking to get a headline and doing something that's only going to help a fraction of the state and then is ultimately going to cost all of us more money in the future. So that will be maybe a little less popular angle, but I think it's the right path forward. I think it's the healthiest path forward. And I think unless we start talking about these voluntary ways to do things, we're only going to see government grow more and more and more. And health insurance and healthcare are the 2 of the most heavily regulated industries in the entire world already. And look what it's happened, right? The most heavily regulated industry in the world is failing miserably right now. It's letting our doctors down. It's letting our nurses down. It's letting our citizens down. So the last thing I want to do is empower what's broken. And I think there's a lot we could do to empower people to do the right thing and to give them the right path to do so. I hope that helps answer your question, Alex. Anna, you say, could you incentivize people to make better use of health savings accounts? And would you? Yeah, absolutely. I think, I'm a big one that thinks that our health shouldn't be taxed. If we want to talk about what taxes are good or bad, or are they all good or are they all bad, I think widely it's accepted. As I've been out on the campaign trail, people agree with me that we shouldn't be taxed to be healthy. The idea that we tax our healthcare and our doctors is kind of silly. So if we could do health savings accounts more readily, and maybe there's a primary, financial holding spot for our money and make everything tax deductible, I think that'd be great. I tend to I don't usually like to make things tax deductible, though. I like to make them tax exempt, or just removing the taxes, because ultimately health savings accounts, while I think it's a very valuable use, ultimately what it does is it gives sick people tax breaks that healthy people don't get. And I don't believe sick people or healthy people should have an advantage over one another when it comes to how government's used. I think going the health savings account is better than what we have currently, but I think going to a full tax exempt for anything health related or anything your healthcare dollars are spent on, that's everything from the bed sheets you die in, because they tax those beds, to the aspirin you take for your migraine, to the cancer treatment you take, and everything in between. So instead of making those tax deductible, let's just make them tax free in the first place, reduce the cost immediately. And then hell, if you also want to make that money tax deductible, then let's do that also, because it makes everything cheaper for everybody. So, okay. Keep chiming in if you got questions. It's an hour. I want to go over 2 more things just real quickly, and then I'm happy to stay on for a few more minutes and chat as well. So auto insurance. Insurance commissioner, a lot of what I talk about right now is healthcare. That's a hot topic, but it, like I said at the start of the call, it affects a lot more than just your healthcare. So I alluded to the power the insurance commissioner has to kind of get in the way of cheaper policies. But he's also specifically done things that have made policies more expensive. So I wanted to touch on that in auto insurance. Coincidentally, because of this virus, the specific issue on auto insurance is going to be exacerbated. So October 2016, the state insurance commissioner mandated that every 3 years, insurance companies must pull your credit. Okay. And according to the contracts already signed, and according to state laws, that those rates must, or that your premium rates must then reflect those credit scores. So what that means is every 3 years your credit get checked, even if you didn't want it to, even if the insurance company didn't want to. And then if your credit gets worse, your rate will change because of the state insurance commissioner said that it must. Okay? I lost a couple jobs in the 08 financial crisis. I worked for the banks, right? So I saw my credit take a dip. I was also young and spent too much money on credit, right? But then I lost some jobs and it spiraled. So my credit tanked for a little while. A lot of people lost jobs and their credit tanked for a little while. A lot of people lost homes, lost retirement, right? A lot of people's credit changed through the banking crisis in 08. So right in 2016, when people's stuff is finally recovered for a couple of years, right? Maybe they shopped around and got a better rate. The state insurance commissioner mandated that we pull credit. Now, for some people, that was great. For some people, they saw, $4 or $5 a month cheaper. Insurance companies were already having those conversations, though. I worked with, as an insurance agent, selling auto insurance. So I saw this on a daily basis, day after day after day for months when it first went down. And we'd have conversations with customers when we're doing policy reviews. We'd say, hey, has anything in your life changed? Have you paid off a house? Have you paid off a credit card? You lost a job? What can we do from a financial review for you here to make your insurance rates cheaper? And if we knew that somebody's credit had gotten better, we would voluntarily have a conversation with them and re-pull their credit. And if their rate had gotten better, we would give them lower rates because of it. And if the rate had gotten worse, maybe they had lost a job. Maybe they paid off a house. Maybe everything was going great and they just paid off a house. This is what my parents-in-law just did. They paid off a house. Their credit went down when they paid off their mortgage. But the way the credit system works is less debt is bad. Now, eventually that can level out, but in the short term, they took a hit and they actually didn't even understand it. And many people don't realize that. So there's a lot of life situations out there that could cause somebody's credit to go down that could ultimately be good things. And yet if their credit goes down, their rate then goes up. And previously, insurance companies could have thoughtful conversations with people and then make individualized policy recommendations and changes based upon those conversations. So that if somebody had sold a house and their credit had gone down, we wouldn't pull their damn credit scores. Or if we would pull it, and then we wouldn't be required by law to use it, and we could leave it as is, right? And then say, okay, well, let's check it again in a year. And if it's gotten better, we'll change it. So instead what we had happen is now everybody gets a one-size-fits-all solution. Some people's credit got better and their rates got better. Some people's credit got worse, a lot worse in some cases, and their rates went up a ton for it. And that's an illustration of how government regulation and inability to look at unintended consequences downhill can be extremely harmful to people. I spoke to countless people. This is the number one question I get from property and casualty insurance agents. First thing they asked me, I had a call about it a couple of days ago, is, are you going to remove the mandatory credit law? They all want this removed. Most insurance companies actually lobbied against this law because they wanted to be able to have better consumer conversations. They don't want one-size-fits-all solutions. They don't make as much money that way, right? They'd rather have diverse solutions for diverse people. So even insurance agents don't like this law. And I saw it on a personal basis where I saw people, maybe their rate would go up 5-15%. I saw people's rates go up 100% on car insurance. I saw people would go from paying $100 a month to $200 a month because they had lost a job, lost their house, and had declared bankruptcy. And we're already living on a budget. And the sad part about that is now they're basically forced to go shop for insurance, right? Because they can't afford the rate that the new company or the company was going to offer because they had to raise the rate based upon the law. And most companies check credit. So they can't even shop around for insurance with any strength in buying power because now they have bad credit and the insurance companies are going to see that and charge them a higher rate. So when bad things happen, companies need the flexibility to make these choices based upon consumer good as much as possible, because allowing that consumer who maybe just lost their job to stay with their current insurance company at the rate that they're already paying is better than having to either pay higher premium with the current company or shop around and get worse coverage with a company that they might not otherwise do business with. So I want to immediately abolish that rule day one. I think we need to put control back in the consumer's hands and let them have more choice. And that's just one way that the insurance commissioner affects car insurance, along with, approving rate changes and new policy types. So there's a lot that we can do from that respect. Does anybody have any quick questions about auto insurance?
No.
Okay, cool. Last topic here real quick, and then we'll digress. This has been a hot one. One of the reasons I chose insurance commissioner, aside from the fact that it's hidden in the shadows and that I'm passionate about it, is I actually didn't really feel like running for office and talking about things like about guns and abortion. There's enough people talking about that already. There's enough people arguing about it. I just didn't want to have to talk about it. But a couple months back, about a year ago, the state insurance commissioner banned something that I didn't even know existed. He banned gun liability insurance policies here in the state of Washington. And immediately I started getting emails from people asking me about it. And I had to research it from the ground up because I didn't even know what it was. And so here I am. I've been talking a lot about guns and gun rights here the last year. And I'm proud to, because I think we need a government that represents individual rights, constitutional law, things like the consent to the governed, and our state constitution, demands that that we, the people, can control how we're ruled, not them ruling over us. So it's been fun from that respect. But the thing about the gun insurance is basically what the product does is it's a membership program. It's not actually even liability insurance. It's basically just a benefits membership. Okay. So you pay your $10 or your $20 a month and you get XYZ benefits. For these particular memberships, that was revolving around gun type topics, and specifically discharging your firearm. Okay. So what the policy covered, or the membership covered, is access to legal defense, access to bond, getting your bond to get out of jail. 1-800 number you can call when you discharge your firearm to give you advice on what to do next, and a handful of other things. And there's other policies that do the same thing. Your roadside assistance policy actually covers things like getting you out of jail and getting you access to legal assistance. But for some reason, they decided to pick on responsible gun owners and ban these policies. And the insurance commissioner stated that he banned them because they cover a crime. Okay. This is wrong for two reasons. Okay. Three reasons, really. Number one, it's not an insurance policy. It's a membership. So I don't believe it should be governed by the state insurance commissioner at all in the first place. There was actually a bill in Olympia this year to rectify that, and it died in committee. It didn't go anywhere. Second thing that's wrong with it is it assumes that if you discharge your firearm, you're automatically a criminal before you're proven guilty, which erodes due process, which is a basic fundamental right of every person in America. And then third, it's not actually illegal to insure a crime in Washington. So he made a policy decision that's actually inaccurate according to the state law. And I have this in writing from his department. Okay. What they're basing this law on the criminality aspect, is it's not actually an RCW that's existing. It is purely a written public policy that they've decided to enact. And they're enacting it based upon one court case where the court decided that you couldn't insure a criminal act in this one specific instance. And now they're basing that rule on that law, literally legislating from the bench in this case, And that request came from the Attorney General, Mr. Bob Ferguson. This is problematic for a couple reasons. One, it says president that they can pass laws, more laws, without actually legislating them. And two, it deems that you're a criminal without going to court. And that's just absolutely evil and terrible in a number of reasons. So I've spoken out about that quite a bit. I would restore access to gun membership insurance day one while advocating that it's not even under the purview of the insurance commissioner in the first place. And what's really frustrating about this, and that the insurance commissioner did this, is because he's tasked with consumer protection. You would think he would focus his energy on things people are complaining about. Ironically, these policies had 0 consumer complaints filed. 0. So he is literally protecting us from something that we're not asking him to protect us from. He is saying that gun owners, responsible gun owners that go out of their way to buy insurance, essentially, are criminals the instant they discharge their firearm. Now, maybe they are. Maybe they kill somebody that they shouldn't have. Maybe they brandish their weapon in a way that they shouldn't have. But that isn't decided until they go to court and the jury or their peers decide it is. And there are a lot of cases where somebody will pull their firearm and discharge it in a pure self-defense situation. Maybe in their own home where their family is being raped and murdered. Right? Well, maybe where a woman is being assaulted by a man and she needs to shoot him to protect herself. Just because you discharge your firearm does not make you a criminal. And to say that you are a criminal when you do so and you shouldn't be able to buy insurance is a violation of due process, is absolutely terrible, and it never should have happened. And the insurance commissioner should be flat ashamed that he did that. And I think it's a stain on his reputation. And I encourage him to immediately repeal those rules and to support the state constitution and the federal constitution to the rights to due process. If he doesn't, I will day one. So if you have any questions about the gun insurance thing, I've got a number of speeches on my Facebook page. Go ahead and scroll through those. Do me a favor in closing here. Because we're not out shaking as many hands, if you like what I've just talked about, help share my campaign. Hopefully I just gave you some information for things you can talk about with your friends as well. We're going to be doing a lot more of these live events. Invite people to them. I know I recognize most of you here on this call now. I appreciate you tuning in. See if you can bring a friend with you next time. Like I said, we'll be doing some more topic-specific ones that people might have more specific interest in, so I think it'll be a lot of fun. But in the meantime, because we can't do events, because I can't go out to street fairs and meet 1,000 people in a day, I need every ounce of help, grassroots, to help spread the word. I'm asking a couple of things. Easiest one is just reach out to 2 people a day, just 2 people a day. I'm asking for 1 person via Facebook and 1 person via text message. Just send somebody a private message and say or a text message and say something along the lines of, hey, I know we don't talk politics a lot. I know this guy running for office. You might want to check out his website. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay. Or if you have a friend that you do talk politics with, go more in depth, right? If they ask questions, answer questions. Pivot them to me if you don't know the answer. But just do 2 a day, maybe 1 in the morning, 1 at night, right? We've got a little extra time these days. If we could all do that, between now and like just May 1st and hopefully events come up, that's 5,000 to 10,000 people that we could reach in free ways. So that's the cheap way, easy way to do it. If you can do more than 2 a day, do 100 a day. I really appreciate it. Share on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you're not following me on any of those platforms, maybe you're following me on one but not the other, do me a favor and go find me. I have Facebook, I have LinkedIn, I've got Instagram, and I've got Twitter. Tweet my posts, comment on them, like them, or love them. The more interaction we can do, even if it's something that you and I have already talked about, if you truly support what we're doing, just put a comment in there and say, hey, great idea, Anthony, right? Because that'll hit your friends' algorithms, and then our stuff will spread wider, farther. Take my post and share them if at all possible. And then if you're reading articles right now on any topic that you think has government reform involved with it, that has to do with reducing cost of insurance or healthcare. Do me a favor, where previously you might have, been talking about your ideas or debating people on them. Let's use our time and energy more specifically to help grow this campaign so that we can actually get people elected into office to change things, and tag my campaign in it, or put a link to my website and say, hey, check out anthonywelty.com. If you see somebody has a comment that says, man, we need more masks, right? Go to that person and reply and say, hey, I know a guy that's been talking about ways that we could have fixed this years ago, right? And then tag my Facebook page, right? Anything you can do to start campaigning for me for free would be much appreciated. You can do that for a couple of minutes a day, or hours a day. If you've got free time and you want to volunteer for the campaign, please let me know. I need donations. This is a hard economic time for everybody right now. I honestly don't even like asking for money. I hate money in politics in general. I'm a salesperson, so I don't mind doing it sometimes, but I hate money in politics. So the idea of asking for money in general for campaigning has not been my favorite thing, but specifically now, when people are struggling, it's even worse. But I know that if I don't, this campaign will die, and we will run out of money, and we won't get anything accomplished. So I still need your donation money, especially for those people that can give. Now is the time to give more to charity and give more to causes, because other people are canceling theirs. And that's to charity and different organizations and political campaigns. So we're all going to have to stretch ourselves a little thinner. We're all going to have to work a little harder to promote the positive change that we need. And anything you can give to the campaign, I would greatly appreciate it. You can do that on anthonywelty.com. If you think you've got a group of friends that might also be willing to give, let's schedule a call just like this, and we can talk for an hour and let people ask me questions, and we can do some fundraising there. Ultimately, we're going to do a lot more with our money than any other politician in the entire country. I guarantee you we'll get the best value on your dollar. And the ideas we have are ultimately what's going to change things for the better in Olympia, because we've had, centuries now of the two-party system ruling things and creating this mess, and it's time that we start thinking outside the box. So go to anthonywelty.com. We also have we got the donation button there, and we've got the website store is now up as well. We'll be adding items to that the next couple of days, along with a couple of pictures that I realized didn't quite make it there. But we've got T-shirts, we got beer koozies, soda koozies if you're not a beer drinker. Sorry, your White Claws are too skinny for these koozies, so you're going to have to figure out your own solution for that. And we'll have T-shirts on there, some pocket constitutions and stuff too. So if you want to get something for your money, feel free to order a shirt. We'll mail you out a shirt here in the next week or so. So I appreciate your time. I've got about 10 minutes left here where I can answer any other questions. We'll be posting this here as soon as I can get rendered, probably tonight or tomorrow morning. So feel free to share it. And, again, just thank you for your time, and God bless, and be free.
Good stuff, Anthony.
Thanks, Eric. Bob. Tell Katie hi.
Thank you.
I'm right here.
Oh, God, I could have been looking at you this whole time. Bob, you got to send the camera over to the better looking half.
No.
I know. Sorry. Okay, take care.
Cool. Everybody have a great day. Stay in touch.
Thanks for everything, Anthony.
Best to the family.
Be well.
Thanks, Anthony. Talk to you later.
See ya on the interwebs.
Yep.
Talk to you soon, Anthony.
Sorry I won't be coming and staying at your place. We were looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, well, maybe down the road. Who knows?
Yeah,
Hopefully
definitely
this will
down the
end
road.
soon.
Definitely down the road. We'll take you up
Maybe
on
we
it. We'll
should
see you
do
soon, Eric.
a video call
Yeah.
after this.
All right, have a good day.
Bye.
Did you want to have a video call after this, Anthony?
I can chat for a second. I should